What's up, man? Thanks for coming by.
Thanks for having me. It's
course.
good that you're located centrally right in the middle of downtown where all of it's happening here in Riverside.
Yeah,
so.
this will be only here for until October, and then we're out of here.
Okay. Well, you still got a few more months.
Yeah, the goal is to get a big warehouse in Riverside and have like
nice.
a big in-house, multiple podcast rooms for people who our clients can use. Like this one's like really generalized to me, so I want to make one like neutral because I have like 5 people that use this one right now. So we want to make it where they have their own space, they can do their own thing, and then I don't know, I'm bored. That stuff makes me fun. I like having everything in house, media, things like that. Yeah, so
I think it's a growing business. I've learned in my podcasting. People listen to podcasts because they commute or they're enjoying something or they need something in the background or they pop it open on their phone and set it whatever. You know, people enjoy the media, and when the media isn't too over commercialized.
Well, that's the other thing too, is that, right? Like now it's so funny. Now I think like, you know, you want to talk about like commercial and big, it's like every person's working an angle or this, and then God, I mean, I'm not too old, but I remember when I was like 18, 19, and I remember I'd be like listening to Howard Stern, and I lived in Orange Crest, and I would drive to RCC to go to college for that short amount of time, and I would remember sometimes I'd get in the car and drive all the way down there, and it'd be commercials the whole way, and I'd never hear one thing of him talking. And I'm like, dude, not cool. So why don't you tell everyone who you are, man?
Bob Marshall, born and raised here in Riverside, and thank you for having me. I like typewriters.
This show is sponsored by Resilient Real Estate Group, powered by EXP. So, you're thinking about buying and selling soon? Yes, we know you probably know a realtor, your mom's best friend's cousin's neighbor, who puts her face on the local shopping cart. But you know what? Our friends at Resilient Real Estate Group have helped hundreds of thousands of people sell houses over the years, and they definitely know what they're doing based on their 5-star review on Google and Zillow. So it doesn't matter if you're looking to buy $1 million house or a fixer-upper, make sure the next time you're thinking about buying and selling real estate, you give our friends a call over at Resilient Real Estate Group. And now we're back to the show. And what made you get into typewriters?
Well, that's a bit of a sad story. Let me tell you the good things about typewriters before I tell you that. Typewriters are that they reigned supreme for 100 years in business and our society as the choice of writing machine. And then these things called computers came out. Computers stole their keyboard from a typewriter. So you could kind of use it like a typewriter, only now everything's digital and everything's on computers. And I think that's great. I haven't figured out how us as a society went from pen and pencil on paper to typing on paper, which is much faster, much more fluid. It works with your brain. You have to be very intensive about what you're writing. It's just you and a typewriter, you and a fine writing machine when you're using an old vintage mechanical typewriter. And then we went to computers, and you know, all the great books you've ever read were written on a mechanical typewriter. Maybe an electric typewriter, but certainly not an electronic typewriter. Probably not. So you have to understand and respect that so many of what we are as a human race in the last 100 years has been written down on a typewriter. So for myself, I'm a local author. I wish I could do it full time, but I don't or can't or have it yet. The joke is always if I wrote another 10 books, I could retire and just stick with writing, but I haven't pulled another 10 books out of me yet. So my book is called American Roadrunner. It's nonfiction. It's a story about myself racing cross country as far as possible. A lot of philosophies dealing with middle-aged man life. The book itself is 221 pages, 87,000 words as it works out. And then when you listen to it, it's 8.5 hours because I recorded it myself on Audible, which has been terribly rewarding. It's much more rewarding. It seems that people would rather listen to my voice read my book than actually read my book.
Do you go off script in the audio?
No, not at all.
No,
it's very on script. It's fun because it's my story, which isn't the important part. The important part is all the things I got to learn racing a chopper across country as fast as possible. Yeah. So the whole book takes place on a 3-day race Well, the race can run a week, but it's how fast can you get across country on an old chopper that you built in your backyard. So I do this. The race no longer exists. The liability just got to be too much. People were dying. So the race is called Stampede, and there's probably only maybe 150 of us who have ever ran it. So it's a pretty tight group. And we're all over the U.S., Canada, Mexico, a few other places. But you'd start on the west coast of the U.S. and end on the east coast.
What city to city?
It always ended in Rockingham, North Carolina,
Okay.
but then it would always start Oregon, San Francisco, Barstow. They'd pick somewhere in California. So the year that I wrote the book around, we started in Barstow, and then we went up north and over and down into Rockingham, North Carolina. It ended at this event. So it was just under 3,000 miles. I did it in 2.5 days.
Wow.
On it's an old cop bike, if you remember the old cop bikes that I chopped up and stretched and lowered, and it's pretty ugly. You'll still see it hopping around town from time to time. I still get it out, or I'm hopping across country, but it's just made to go fast and far. So I wrote a book about that, called it American Roadrunner. While I was writing the book, I started writing the book, and I'm a firm believer that every man really needs to find a way to publish in his life, one way or another, whatever it may be. For me, it was this and philosophy of middle age. I'm 45 now, so at the time I was just turning 40. So I really had to write it all out, for lack of a better term, kids and relationships and life, and it all seems to go back to the road for me, and what does it take to get back to the road? And the road will throw a bunch of answers at you to questions that you have, but most likely it'll give you more questions, and then you'll realize you have none of the answers, and that's okay. That's just part of life. So when I was writing it, I started, I would hand it to my dad, print it out, and hand it to my dad to edit.
Oh, really?
Yeah, my dad was a big bookie, his literacy rate was just off the charts. He'd consume, several books a week. All the good classics, whether they're Louis L'Amour's or any of the sci-fi or modern thrillers,
See, I wish I could get into more of those books. For me, I never read before getting into business, so a lot of our books is like business related.
Right.
Sometimes it gets so tiring and they're so boring.
Right.
And then you read, you're like, I usually get done with like 500 pages. You're like, I literally didn't get one thing out of this book that I haven't heard already. I should have just not even read it.
Have you listened? Can you listen?
I listen,
to them?
yeah.
I love to listen.
I like listening because I can speed it up.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? I can speed it up. And then the issue with me is that the only thing I don't like about listening is like sometimes I'll be trying to do two things at once, and then I'm like, what did he say? Like, let me go back and like, kind of like that. So for you, when you were writing this book, was it nerve-wracking giving it to your dad? Because he's like, seems like he was such a smart guy.
Yes.
Was it intimidating to like hand this over to him? Like,
yes.
What is he gonna say about this?
Yes.
Obviously it's so funny as kids, or as like who our dads are. Like me and my dad had lived totally different lives, but at the end of the day, it's like, okay, like my dad worked very hard, and that's something I really learned from him. Like, you work every single day, you shut your mouth, you don't complain, you take care of your family. That's what you do. So now it's like, I feel like I can't complain about working too much because my dad didn't work too. You know what I mean? So for you, was it nerve-wracking doing that with your dad? Because
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
He was up for it though. He past tense. He was my best friend.
Mm-hmm.
He has since passed on, and that's how I got into typewriters. He's sitting there editing. He's got a big red pen.
Why does it have to be red?
Dads, they love it. He told me, bring a red pen. And he's sitting there in this hospital, and he just had a triple bypass. He's recovering. He's getting ready to leave, and he looks up at me and he goes, "You need to use an old mechanical typewriter to write. This would really help your writing." And I thought, that's dumb. I have a phone. I have a laptop. Like, I'm good, Pops. This laptop will stay awake for like 9 hours with like this new battery is
It's awesome.
bitching, man. Yeah. He goes, think about using an old mechanical typewriter. And I thought, that's dumb. So probably an hour goes by. We're getting ready to leave, and he just strokes out in front of me. Dies in my arms. And after funeral and everything else, it took me a week or two, maybe 3 weeks, and I went, what was the last bit of advice he gave me? Use a typewriter?
Yeah.
So I got a typewriter. Coincidentally, it was from my mom. It was her dad's typewriter. And there was a lot wrong with it. Well, I'm a mechanic by trade. You know, I've built motorcycles for the fun of it. I take care of buildings for a living, all the skyscrapers in downtown here. That's what I do for my normal job. I work for the county as a building mechanic, so I keep those buildings open for all the important people that run our county, right? So I just started ripping into this machine, and I realized this machine's a lot smaller than a building. It's probably equally as complicated, but what a joy.
Yeah.
So that was one machine, and I got it going, and new rubber, and everything's cleaned, and a little bit of lube. Typewriters don't take much lube. They're very fine metals, so you got to know where to lube and where not to lube. And I thought, I need to get another one. Well, 6 years have passed since that, and needless to say, now I've got a whole typewriter shop. They're not overly popular. I've learned, like, here on the West Coast, it's all just like movie stars and famous people who are my customers because they're the only one that using typewriters.
Yeah. And I assume there's not that big of a market out there for you. Like,
no,
you know what I mean?
Not too much. And you'd be amazed. I've done business with all sorts of people, and then come to find out they've written one of my favorite movies.
Interesting.
One of my top 10 movies, maybe not top 5, but or who knows, And Hollywood several years ago really got hacked, and so they kind of learned if they keep everything to the typewriter, they can keep that anonymity of what exactly it is they're writing. And they've learned too, as professional writers, that the more they can use a typewriter and not be able to go back or try to edit in the middle of the writing, they can just let it flow, let it flow and let it go. And so we've had a lot of fun with that. A lot of it is, my process of writing for myself. The typewriter is just part of the process for me. That is, I can type out, I can type out a framework of what I want to write, then I can actually type it out. And then I go back through, instead of going through cutting, pasting, editing, all these things on a computer screen, I just retype the freaking manuscript.
Yeah.
And it's the best self-editing I could ever do for myself. I've learned I'm very different. Most people don't do that. They don't like to do that. They don't even like to self-edit, a lot of writers. But that's what I love. I just type it twice. And I only type 30, 40 words a minute. I'm not 80 words
Super
a minute.
Fast,
yeah, I'm fast enough. And I do touch type. I don't have to look at the letters or anything. And that's been another thing I've learned. A lot of people don't touch type these days. So when you're using an old vintage typewriter, it's similar to like playing a musical instrument. I think it is. I'm a guitar player, mandolin, bass, all that. So, and that was my business for a long time. So I related all to that. And then how are you touching this machine to get it to work for you, to get it to wordsmith for what you're creating? So
do you have certain typewriters that, like, obviously, like, musicians have certain guitars, like Adrian, our videographer, he plays the drum professionally for a lot of bands, and he has like 4 or 5 of them. Like, he always buying more drums. He's like, he'll show me this, he's like, yo, what about this drum set? I'm like, dude, that's like 7. He's like, I know, but this one has sparkles on it. I'm like, what does that matter? He goes, it does. Okay. So for you, like, when you're typing on different machines, does it do you get a different feeling or vibe from a machine?
Yeah. And you want to type differently, and machines will inspire you to type differently. I had one machine, and all it did was inspire me to type out naughty things. And I thought, this is great, but I can't keep this, and I ended up selling it. It's very big green. It's called a Hermes Ambassador, weighs about 48 pounds.
Really?
It's just the most pristine typing machine I could ever imagine, but different typewriters will inspire you to type different things. And they all feel different, act different. Like a car or anything else, you could have 2 cars that were made on the assembly line right after each other, and they're going to drive totally different.
So for you, when you're writing, do you feel like the typewriter makes you not correct yourself, where it's more permanent out there?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just like playing, when I'm on stage, not that I'm on stage often, but it's happened a handful of times, or hundreds of times. If you make a mistake, all you have to do is make it twice, and the audience thinks it's supposed to be. So it's no different when you're typing, and that's okay. And if you do, you just keep going, and everyone will say, well, how do I correct the word? Well, you don't need to correct the word, because when you're reading back through it, your brain will see that word does not apply to the English language, and it'll skip right over and keep going. So
it's funny how our brains work.
Oh yeah.
Where literally like I don't know, remember I think it was like a thing on Facebook or something. I don't remember. It's like all these words are like misspelled and everything, and our brains are able to put it all together.
Absolutely.
Even if things are misspelled, it's because we've seen them so many times or whatever that it's like our brain will know that it's a mistake and just
and I
put it all together.
I suspect there's a proper term for that, and I need to know it.
I don't know what that term
that's
is.
called.
Yeah.
Because it's a huge part of reminding people that it's okay to use typewriters. Yes, they're mechanical. Yes, sometimes it's like pushing an old truck down the road with a 3 on the tree and the clutch, and who knows?
And there's no power steering.
No power steering, no power brakes.
Yeah.
But I think that's the best part. I mean, it's all human powered, and they take a little more maintenance. I just tell people if you use it once a week, it really will last forever. You can go a year before you need a ribbon, and a few other little things. But these are all common things, and so I've been doing classes on this. I've been doing typewriter lessons for people, and the lessons are just one-on-one. Let's get you in half an hour for a week for a month, and people normally get it. And all I'm really doing is giving them permission.
Yeah.
You have permission to use this machine to the best of its ability, and this is how it works, and this is how I use it. Okay, your turn, right?
Yeah.
And people need that sometimes. So I really very much enjoy that. I've gotten together with Inlandia lately. Inlandia Institute is a wonderful local organization, and they specialize in creative writing, and a typewriter being the creative writing instrument that it is. They'll have me out at events, at high schools or whatever. And Inlandia is so busy. They're always doing so many wonderful things for local writers. They're publishing local writers. They're setting up workshops for local writers. So I've done a few things on that as well. So if any of the watchers, listeners out there get a chance, check out Inlandia. Inlandia Institute does some really great things, and I'm excited to hang out with them, And I was hanging out at the Riverside Art Museum all summer. I had a display up there for 3 months, and we had, I think it was 8 typewriters in there and a few on display, and anybody, who was in the museum could start typing on the typewriters, and that was a lot of fun. It was really great to see what people type, how kids use them, how grandparents would. It seems like much older people would look at them as like, that's a work tool. I'm not at work. I want nothing to do with that. And parents would kind of go, I remember my mom used, and then kids just love them. Kids just go
they're
crazy.
Different.
They're totally different.
Yeah.
They make total sense. Like, I can write on this, and Google won't see what I'm writing.
Yeah. I actually never thought about that, about the Hollywood thing, that people could hack.
Mm-hmm.
They could hack a computer, something could get out. But if you're typing, it's impossible to get out. I've never thought about that before.
I mean, barring a major fire, you're gonna be okay.
That's insane. It's funny. When I was a kid, my mom had an automatic typewriter because she would like type stuff. So I just remember being a kid with like, and it would be like she would be able to type it out and then hit like repeat, and it would just type out what she wanted.
Right,
so it was like the middle ground. It had like a small screen on it, so you could technically go back if you wanted to.
Right.
But that was when we grew up. That's what the typewriter we had in the house.
And those are great. Those are great machines. I like to specialize in the vintage machines because right down the road over in Colton, there's Inland Business Machines, and they do printers, and they do the electronic typewriters versus like mine might be electric assist, maybe not. Most of mine are manual, and they do all that. So we still have a great resource here locally. I appreciate it's Colton and technically San Bernardino, but we have a great resource to keep those going because, there's a lot of people who keep those going because they want to correspond. There's a ton of letter writing in typewriters, and some people prefer the new electronic ones like that, and other people prefer like the vintage mechanical ones like I do. So.
And I will say, I don't care what printer you have. Like we have a very high tech printer here.
Yeah.
You can never print out, make it look like a typewriter. A typewriter looks like a typewriter.
Well, and that the word type is Greek for emboss. Imprint. And so once you hit your finger to the key and that arm comes flying up and that slug hits that piece of paper, you've made that. That's your imprint. That letter is embossed in that piece of paper forever. We as humans have a wonderful relationship with paper, and we have for thousands of years. So it's pretty exciting.
You know I can waste no time, cause I gotta keep it tight. I'm in my bag, got my eyes on the price. You know I can waste no time, cause I gotta keep it tight. I'm in my bag, no time, cause I gotta keep it tight. Give me the bass, give me the beat. I'm in my bag, this round is on me. Give me the bass, give me the beat. I'm in my bag, this round is on me. Give me the bass, give me the beat. I'm in my bag, this round is on me. Give me the bass, give me the beat. I'm in my bag, this round is on me.
It's gonna be interesting, like what will last longer, right? Like books are out there obviously, and those will still be around, but it's like is like, are we going in this new transition as like podcasting is like the new type, like, you know what I mean? Like now that this is so able for anyone to do, what gold might come out of these now?
Right.
I mean, even like writing a book or audiobook, it's like to think that you could write your own book now, this day and age.
Right.
Do an audiobook.
Right.
All on your own, and you don't need anyone's approval or any corporation to put this together. The bar of entry is so low that it's like there will be magic that comes.
Oh yeah.
That like we don't even know about yet.
Well, there will be not so magic that
that's
comes
true.
too. Which
there's more noise now, but there's gonna be some gems.
Yeah, absolutely. There's gonna be some huge gems, and I think there already has been. We're very fortunate. Technology will progress. But at what point do we stop and realize what parts of technology can serve us and what parts of technologies do we want to serve us? And what parts of technology do we just full on rebuke because they aren't going to work? You know, I could go on and on. I mean, I'm not too much of a conspiracy theorist or anything, but I'm pretty good at spending cash. I just prefer to spend cash as opposed to swiping a card everywhere. You know, I prefer paper. And they're learning, the younger generation. You know, you ask any kid, you're going to school, what do you want? They don't say they want a laptop. They say they want pens and pencils and paper. This is what they want, which is nice because we've gotten to that point. You know, our literacy rate is at an all-time low, 100-year low.
Yeah.
The college entrance, we haven't seen numbers this low since 1920. It's very hard for us to wrap our heads around, and we don't talk about it. And that's very sad too. But the answer is the more kids can be in contact and touch and see that what they're physically creating, especially when it's wordsmithing on a piece of paper with a mechanical typewriter, the more they can get in touch with that. And kids are, you know, they're really rebelling against electronic communication, electronic creativity, whatever it may be. Some people gravitate to it and grab onto it, and they'll do all their artwork electronically. And good for them. I
try to get to. I bought a mini iPad to do notes on, so I could take it to like conferences.
Sure.
And then I just hate it.
Yep, me too.
I try to. I even have the pen.
Right.
I've tried it so many times. I'm like, just give me the pen and paper.
Hundreds of dollars later, similar to myself.
Literally, what a waste of money.
What a waste.
Like, I have like 3 iPads. Like, I'm like, no, this makes more sense. I can carry it in a hand, and I could go back, and this, that, and the other. And then I'm like, oh my God, can I just get a pen and paper to make life so much easier? I honestly think that maybe even more, I think kids are going to start realizing, especially younger, it's like, the oversaturation of information is just too much.
Oh yeah.
You know, and I think that's like, I have stepkids that are 14, 12, and 10, and it's like, you know, I try to tell them, I'm like, dude, the consumption of information, your brain also needs a break. Like, you don't always have to have a screen in front of you. You don't always have to be playing games, and it's crazy. They're at a point now where it's like, if we're driving in the car, they don't have something, they don't know how to just sit there and just like stare out the window and think, or, you know what I mean?
Right.
They just don't know.
That's right.
You know, and like you said, it's like, I mean, I'm not going to go conspiracy either, but it's like, what people don't realize is there's so many distractions out there, and they're invaluable distractions.
Right.
And that's what I don't think people process is like these hours of wasteful thinking and doing will add up to negative outcomes.
Absolutely.
You might realize or not realize it.
That's right. Absolutely. So how do we get people, especially younger people, but how do we get people creating again and using typewriters? I'm a firm believer that typewriters are a great tool to get, whether kids are journaling, whether they're writing a story, whether they're just doing a rough draft like I use typewriters for. Whatever it may be, a typewriter is a tool. Now, I appreciate it's like a bicycle, or you got to use it once a week to keep it going. But if you do that, and keep it covered, I like to say keep the Riverside off of the machine. If you keep the dust out of the machine, it's going to last forever.
And I think it allows people to be okay to make a mistake.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? It's more accepted.
Yeah. Mistakes are such a huge part of who
Where
we are
nowadays
nowadays.
it's like, you know what I mean? Like anytime someone posts an Instagram story where like there's an auto correction or something, they'll like repost the next one like correction, and you're like, listen, if someone's gonna I had someone DM me the other day like a correction. I'm like, you got nothing better to do you? You literally got nothing better to do than send me a misspelling on an Instagram post.
Yeah, that's true. That's a hard one. You can imagine all my spell checks are shut off on all my electronic
Oh,
devices.
yeah.
I want nothing to do with them trying to correct me.
Yeah.
So that's another thing. And I was having a conversation with somebody who's in media a few weeks ago, and I said, the answer may be, you're in media, I'm the mechanic. I may have better spelling than you do because your autocorrect is on and mine is not.
Exactly.
If I need a word, I have to stop. Yes, I could look it up in a dictionary. I Google it. I like to, Google. That's what I pick up my phone, Google the word. Oh, that's the word, and I keep going, right? Or I spell the word wrong, and as I go back, depending on the situation. But it's okay for us to have that human error, but we build the relationships with the words that we're using.
Because you're stopping and taking the time to actually figure out what the word is.
That's right.
And not just passing over it.
That's right. Or accepting and or hoping the computer
We'll
gets
grab
it
it.
right. Yeah.
I mean, trust me, like we have, on our work computers, we have Grammarly because we send official emails.
Yeah.
And it's like, I've seen people write wrong emails that should have been corrected, that it's like, and the hard part is not everyone's always okay with mistakes. So it's like, who on the other hand might take that as a negative thing where it's like, this person can't write a sentence. They obviously can't handle something this big. Okay. Like,
Yeah, that'd be a hard one in business. And in business,
And in
it is
business,
hard.
yeah.
Especially, I get them all the time. It's spelled incorrectly, possessive versus plural, whatever,
Yeah. Then and nan.
contractions. Oh, my gosh.
don't even give me then and there.
Your, you are.
Yeah.
Come on, people.
It's
hard.
It is hard. What the English is? The English language the hardest language or no? What's the hardest thing? I think it's my girlfriend's.
Well, that's
my
a good-
girlfriend's
yeah.
from the border of Mexico and Arizona, so
Sure.
she speaks Spanish.
Right.
And then like she'll be like, "Well, that word also means this," and I'm like, "Well, shoot, how am I supposed to know what you're saying to me? I don't even know Spanish. I'm trying to pick it up."
It is the most common language. Now, that's fun because I have a lot of friends who Spanish is their primary language. And coincidentally, they're highly educated individuals. So and they happen to be in typewriters. So to watch them type, and then they have to stop, and there are dead keys. Maybe they're putting a tilde or something on top of a letter. They have to find the upside down question mark for the beginning. And they've told me it actually stops their process and has their brain shift because they're busy trying to add all this extra punctuation. Where for me, if I need an apostrophe, I know to shift 8. I can do it in my sleep. It looks like this, right? So that's kind of a fun conversation to have with people who speak Spanish or can write Spanish, and how do they do on a Spanish keyboard for a typewriter. The letters are the same, they just have different punctuations, and again, as I mentioned, some dead keys where you hit the key and it adds a tilde, for example, on the top of a letter, and then you have to remember to hit the space bar to get going
again. So for you obviously are into typewriters. Just a little bit.
I have a full typewriter repair shop.
Yeah.
Full service, 1,000 square feet of lathe and parts washer, and anything you'd expect to see in like a motorcycle repair shop. That's because I went from motorcycles to typewriter. I still have motorcycles hanging around. Don't get me wrong, but typewriters are rubber, ink, and steel. Metal, and very precious metals, which is really great. They really can survive. And the the paint may be ugly. Sometimes I'm painting. Yeah. But for the most part, this thing's ugly. It's beaten up because somebody's loved on it, but it's got fresh new rubber, and look at the way it types, It
has a little history behind it.
Yeah. And there's no parts. I can't call someone for parts. I'm setting up deals with different companies, for the rubber. Getting the rubber is a really big thing. It's really hard. The rubber's all different, and it's all on the platen, that cylinder, that the paper. Because when the slug hits, the slug's flat, but the cylinder's curved, so it needs to have a bit of drommeter to it. So it needs to be soft. And there's a ton of typewriters out there that just don't work. They just they're good looking pieces.
The parts don't work.
You got to wash them out. You got to adjust. There's fine adjustments. There's springs. There's all sorts of little. It's not uncommon to see me with, super duper spectacles on, and I'm in a machine, and I'll spend 6 or 8 hours on a machine sometimes getting it right. But I enjoy that. It's great relaxation. And then I have a full showroom. We always have about 50 machines available, different colors, different types, different like I mentioned, a Spanish keyboard. I have one right now with a Dutch keyboard.
Really?
So if you're interested.
My grandmother was from Holland.
Okay, right. So she would know what all these extra symbols on the keyboard
She used to yell at me all the time in Dutch and German when I was a kid. I had no idea what she was saying. So you're really into that, and you're really into writing, but now you're also a podcaster. So you're like doing both worlds. Like you're into
That's right.
You're into like old school writing, but new school talking.
Well, I let it serve me.
Yeah.
What am I if I'm into but you walk into my house, there's not a TV.
I don't have a TV.
There's no TV.
I have no TV. I bought that TV. We've never turned it on. Don't know why I bought it. I don't even know why we bought it. I literally was like, I feel like a TV to go on this wall. Never turned it on one time. What a waste. But we don't have a TV. I don't have a TV in my bedroom. Everyone's like, how do you not have a TV? I'm like, I do not. When I go in there, it is me to go to bed.
Right.
I don't want a TV in there.
Made for watching TV in bedrooms is not
a good.
But a lot of people do, and a lot of people. I had a typewriter in my bedroom for a while. I kind of got rid of that. But that was just too. I'll just go to my desk, But technology has to serve us. When we are busy serving technology, we've lost. So.
Do you make time to write, or do you just write when you feel like it?
I try to make time to write. I actually have a separate building on my property that I use just for writing. It's very private. I've never taken pictures of it. I don't let other people see it. I've just got typewriters in there and old computers because I can work on the old computers, and I enjoy the way the keys feel better. And it's just going to Google Cloud, so who cares? I don't need, but it's a whole, we call it the writing wagon. It's a very large RV trailer, that houses my writing. And I can disappear in there for days if I needed to. It's got a kitchen and a bathroom and whatnot. But no, I wish I made more time to write, as I guess anybody would. But
you got to get those 10 more books.
Yeah, right. Get those out. Yeah, I'm looking to do a sequel to American Roadrunner. And then I started writing fiction just as a great exercise. I've written a lot for like magazines, whether they be motorcycles. I don't, now that I think about it, I haven't written any articles for typewriter related. There's so many good people writing good things about typewriters with typewriters. I do the podcast, and the Typewriter Podcast is a lot more popular than I ever thought it possible. It's not uncommon for me to be out. So I have another trailer I'll take with me, and I'll fill the trailer full of typewriters. And we call it the Emporium on Wheels, the Typewriter Emporium on Wheels. But I'll take it out. And it's got a whole bench, so I can do most things. I don't have all the machines that I need, but if somebody just needs a machine serviced or working again, or a light service or a bit of maintenance, whatever, I can do that. And I'll be there, and I'm talking, and someone will walk by, stop, turn around, see the typewriters, and they'll go, "Are you Bob? Are you the guy that does?" Like right now as we speak, I bet you at least 28 people are listening to my voice on purpose.
It's a crazy thing, right? Like it is a weird thing that like people who don't do this aren't used to it. Like we'll go somewhere in Riverside and someone's like, "You're the guy that does that," and I'm like, "Oh yeah, that's me." And they're like, "I saw your video. You did this with so and so." Oh, okay, cool. Like. And then someone's like, "Do you know that person?" I have no idea who that person is. and then you feel bad because sometimes you've met someone a few times and you're like, "Oh, like, dude, I talked to like 7 people today. Like, I've had 7 podcasts today. I have no idea." Like, or you're burnt out. Do you ever get tired of writing or tired of working on typewriters?
No,
or frustrated? Does it get frustrating?
No, I think there's a lot of people who would get frustrated. I hold myself in that high degree of mechanic, right? So many people, you can be a technician these days and specialize in something. You can be a worker where you show up and do something, but I work very hard to always be the mechanic. And that's a funny thing about me. People will frustrate me all day long, but machines never do. They're just dumb machines. They just do what you tell them to do, whatever that may be. So a few times, I've gone, well, I'm not getting this now. Let me set this aside. Let me work on this. Okay, I feel better about myself. And then I wake up at 3 a.m. in the morning going, I know what's broken. I'm going to fix it now, right? So that happens, but that was always a joke. My father was an engineer. He was quite mechanical, but not, it wasn't uncommon for him to throw a wrench.
Oh, really?
And I remember being a kid seeing that going, I'm never going to be like that.
Mm-hmm.
That's funny.
Yeah.
So.
It's crazy. I think the cool thing I'm excited for moving forward, like especially with this stuff that we're doing. You were asking me before the podcast, but like a big mistake I had, like right above you, is my grandfather, and he was a big person in here. And it's like I wasn't doing podcasts before he passed away.
Oh, sure.
So I was like, God, if I could have had him on an hour podcast and having that forever.
Yeah.
Like my goal is to have my parents on in the next few weeks.
Yeah.
To have that, like, you know what I mean? Like right now, I have voicemails from him that I never deleted. But I'm like, what if I had now I look at it as like, what if I had an hour podcast with him every year? You know what I mean? Like that would be. I think that's the one cool thing that a lot of people miss the boat on with even this stuff.
And as long as the internet's up, they'll live in infamy.
Oh yeah,
they really will. I mean, the electric grid is still up. I don't see the internet falling down anytime soon. So you're absolutely right. And I hope in the future there's a service of some type where maybe we can sit down with our older generation and ask all those questions and get all the answers. And whether it's an hour or 10 hours or 100 hours, who knows? I've learned so much, especially in the world of typewriters. Our last typewriter shop here in Riverside was Riverside Typewriter, and it was owned by a man named Fontaine, and he unfortunately passed away a handful of years ago. And his shop was in the Brockton Arcade. I think it was called Arcade Typewriter. I remember going in there 20 plus years ago, to buy ink for something. And he's going, are you sure you don't want a typewriter? Like, nobody wants typewriters anymore. And I got all these great typewriters,
Yeah.
Do you want to touch a typewriter? Well, now I'm that guy. Do you want to touch it? Do you want to touch typewriters? He was a good one. And so at the time, I was caddy corner. I had the service center in the back of Music Mike's.
Oh, yeah.
So I was big in guitar repair, amp repair. And it was actually a pretty good sized shop. It had several employees, and we had a really good time with that. So repairing and customer service and getting people to, I'd set up a guitar, and how does that person play, and how can I make sure this guitar will serve its owner? I do the same things with typewriters these days, and so it seems to be working. I set them up, and it's just I do a handful of repairs a week. I might sell a few typewriters a week. So it's very low quantity, which enables me to provide all that extra service because there's just not much business. Who really attracts the typewriters is like younger women. So anytime I have the typewriter out, I've taken pictures before, and I feel like I'm hanging out with my daughter and all her friends, So I've had to accept that. And how do I make sure they're okay? Playing with the typewriters. Okay, well, hit it a little harder than you think. And, well, I don't want to break it. No, it can handle it. It's 75 years old. It's going to be just fine. Yeah.
But even like that, to think that like going back to that, you can be in a point in life where you can write something and know that no one's going to see it. You know what I mean? Like you can put down, like you said, journaling or things like that. But even like you can be able to write something that's just yours. And that is something that's so hard nowadays, that you can have something that's not like my life. Like people go like, you don't post your personal life online that much. Like, don't you want to post your personal life? I'm like, no, not really. And they're like, why? I go, that's because that's mine. Right. Like me and my girl are like, we never post photos of each other. I'm like, because I don't want to. And they go, why? Because that's not real life. Like the internet is not real.
Sure.
Like let me have something that's just mine. I don't need to make a post and then see who comments or likes it or whatever. I'm good. Like I don't need that. Like or something probably like you. Like I could write something. And I don't really need someone to read it, and I just want to write it for me, and I want to have that for myself. And maybe I'll go back and read it every once in a while, and just kind of get my thoughts down on paper.
Yeah. Don't be afraid to put it in the old steel case and come back to it later. See how it's treating you. We really move around in life too, and that was a big. People have gifted me a lot of typewritten themes throughout the years, typewriters as well. But it's not. I have several manuscripts of people's life work, and they would just sit down every 6 months and talk about what they're doing. Their African story, if you will. That was always a joke. Everyone had a book about Africa. I've got one guy's manuscript, and I mean, it's 6, 7, 8 inches.
Yeah.
You know I can waste no time, cause I gotta keep it tight. I'm in my bag, got my eyes on the price. You know I can waste no time, cause I gotta keep it tight. I'm in my bag, got my eyes on the price. You know I can waste no time, cause I gotta keep it tight. Give me the bass, give me the beat. I'm in my bag, this round is on me. Give me the bass, give me the beat. I'm in my bag, this round is on me. Give me the bass, give me the beat. I'm in my bag, this round is on me. Give me the bass, give me the beat. I'm in my bag, this round is on me.
And it's a whole system of him just typewriting. And you can see every handful of years a typewriter changes. But he's just writing out his life. And we just don't do that anymore. And I wish we did. Or maybe we expect social media to do that with the pictures that we're taking, like you said.
Or we just want to move. Everyone wants to move so fast now.
Yeah, I think it's really okay to slow down, enjoy a typewriter, turn your phone off. I know my phone's off right now, but just turn your phone off and have a good time and enjoying. And that's what I enjoy about riding motorcycles too. It's time to alone. When I was in high school, I ran cross country.
Me too.
And everyone
What school did you go to?
So, born and raised in Riverside. My parents got divorced. I went to Corona High. I moved to Corona for a little bit.
Yeah.
But that was fun. It was a pretty good school at the time, and I grew up with some cool people, and we're still all good friends. And a lot of them moved to Riverside, coincidentally, or out and about. Corona just got to be a little bit
Too pricey.
too pricey and too commuter.
Yeah, too commuter heavy.
Yeah.
I don't like to hop on the 91/15 to go south. No, thank you. At any time of the day, I have no desire to go down there.
Yeah.
With the traffic.
And that's the area has really changed, and you got to learn to work the area. When we were kids, it would have been like, let's go to LA for something cool. But now all the cool stuff has come this way, I think. And we've got more museums in the state than we do McDonald's,
and especially art
really
museums.
Cool.
And
oh yeah, it's
Riverside's
wonderful.
Riverside's pretty trendy. It's pretty
yeah.
hipster. Like, it's pretty like new age, like all the art things and everything. Like, it is definitely that area.
Yeah, it's only getting better. I really enjoy the arts walks. I haven't been public about. Can I make a confession on this?
Yeah, go ahead.
So a buddy of mine, I won't say his name. He's a librarian though in town. Good buddy of mine, and we like challenged each other to go to Arts Walk and buy all of our Christmas presents.
Oh yeah,
and see who could spend the most money
at the art walk.
At the art walk, he brought his daughter with him. He won by $100 because his daughter was busy buying stuff too. But we just dropped hundreds of dollars. Like
it's
every
nice,
bouth we
man.
Bought something from.
To think what those people are putting out there. That means something.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And even if I remember there was one booth, the guy had a lot of like marijuana smoking paraphernalia. Obviously, I work for the government. I don't have the ability to, but he still had some cool other stickers. Give me 2 stickers. I'll take it. Anything. I just kind of got to give $5, $10, $20 to everybody, and it felt amazing.
Yeah, it feels good to give back. I think that's the thing that it's like, dude, I would say if you're unhappy with your life, figure out a way to give back and you'll feel better.
Yeah.
And it's so crazy. You think you got to take care of yourself, but the moment you start taking care of other people, you're like, oh wow. Like probably for you, the moment you hand someone over a typewriter or whatever that, or they come back to you and they say, hey, I started typing and this is what I've enjoyed. Look what I've written. That's a great feeling. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Who would ever think like that? But it's true. Like, that is what gives you enjoyment. Yep. You know what I mean? It's crazy. So why don't we lead on this? What is, how do people get a hold of you? How do people find you? What's the best way to contact you if they want to get into typewriting or have any questions for you or listen to your podcast, whatever?
Yeah, absolutely. The podcast is Austin Typewriters, Inc. You can find it on any format, hosted by myself, Bob Marshall. It'll say West Coast host Bob Marshall, Austin Typewriters Inc. And we might put out an episode once a month, but there's a lot of great education. If you want to get into typewriters, or you're thinking if you're type curious, the podcast is a great way to listen and enjoy that. There's also, of course, tons of information online. There's great communities and tens of thousands of people that use typewriters every day, even in our little country. But I'm big on Instagram at Typewriter Muse, MUSE, Typewriter Muse. That's a great way to see all the fun stuff that I'm doing. Of course, I'm on Facebook. Of course, I'm on TikTok. Of course, I'm
You're
big
on
on
TikTok?
YouTube.
Wow.
Oh, I love TikTok.
No,
It like
I hate
reminds
TikTok.
me of what YouTube was 20 years ago.
Dude, TikTok is the
I know,
worst.
shame on me. But
Literally, like, it's so funny. I'll literally like ask people, like, be like, do you even know what you just looked at? They're like, no, I have no idea. Like, they just like
they
scroll.
just keep scrolling.
They just keep scrolling. It is overwhelming. I'm surprised that you're on all those platforms. Congratulations.
Well, I just let them serve me,
Yeah.
you know, and I might upload certain things to TikTok, and I upload almost everything to Instagram, it feels like. But I'm admin for a few groups on Facebook, because a lot of typewriters, older people are on Facebook, right? That's kind of the comments that people make. Naturally, I have a website, typewritermuse.com. I prefer old phone calls. I
love
prefer
phone
to talk
calls.
to people.
I hate texting.
Yeah, 951-384-0646.
I'm an anti-texter. Everyone will text me. I call them. They're like, "Why do you always call me?" I'm like, "I hate texting." You know what's great? I will say about technology is that it doesn't matter what you're into, you'll be able to find someone else that's into it too.
Yeah. Oh,
and
yeah.
that is what if there's one good thing that's come out of social media, if there's one thing, it's that anyone can have a community.
Bird watchers are a lot bigger than you think in the U.S. I've learned that.
Yeah, right. Things like that.
A lot more popular than motorcycle riders or
You wouldn't,
typewriter
but
users.
it's not sexy, and people don't know about it unless you're in the group.
Bird watching is maybe we should get into bird
Dude,
watching.
I think I would blow my brains out. I literally, I mean, I like being quiet, but not that quiet. For me, I'm actually you're talking about cross country. I run cross country. I've never run a marathon. I think I'm gonna run a marathon this year, and I'm kind of really looking forward to. I'm into road biking, so I do enjoy riding road bike and just like being quiet and like thinking.
Just that time alone.
But running's way less dangerous. I never realized how dangerous bikes are until you get one.
Oh yeah.
You can't zone out. Running, you can zone. Yeah. Bike, you're like potholes, thinking cars, people. It's tiring.
Those guys are the dirty bikers, as I like to say. If you can put on the super tight pants and ride in track, like you've got us people on motorcycles have nothing over you. You guys are just rock stars.
Ours is just easier to work on.
If you see me running these days, call the police. Someone's probably chase me with a gun. I don't run anymore, unfortunately. I should, that's for sure, at my age. But good for you, sir. That's
try
cool.
to.
That'll be fun.
Bob, it was a pleasure, man. It's always great to talk to people like you.
Thank you.
It is the greatest thing about this podcast is I could go from having someone like you. I think like later tonight I have an up and coming rapper, so it's like it doesn't matter what. It's so different on this page. People, make sure. Obviously, I never used a typewriter in a very long time. But I definitely have enjoyed this conversation. I will let you know that.
Thanks, man.
I've learned a lot
for
today.
having me.
So, guys, make sure you go follow them. Make sure you follow us, share, and all those things. Until next time, guys. Peace.